as people start to join, and they can always view it later as well. So thank you for being on today, Sheldon. So today is our Town Hall Thursday. It's the first one that we're doing, put on by the Salt Lake County Republican Party. And I hope this is successful. I hope this is helpful for the people who are who have to go to the polls and try to decide who to vote for. I think that one of the things that happens is the party does all this work. We elect delegates and precinct chairs and all the people that's necessary to nominate candidates, and then we kind of forget to let everybody know what happened, right? And so we forget to let people know that that we've nominated the candidates that we believe represent the party the best. And so we really wanted to make sure people were aware of today's Town Hall Thursday so that we can introduce you to one of the candidates who won, and won fairly significantly for the County Council District 5 race. But before we do that, there's a couple things I want to get into. We are going to have more of these town halls. So today is County Council 5, but on June 2nd, the next Thursday, or next week, we're going to have House District 41, 45, and 46, as well as we're also going to have a separate Zoom session or a separate, what am I trying to say? Excuse me, town hall for the school board 4 and 11. So I'm getting distracted with people trying to join. So, and then after that, we're going to have June 9th, where we're going to have a second one for the school board 4 and 11. June 16th, another one for the House District 41, 45, and 46. And then we'll have Sheldon on again on June 23rd. And then what we'll do is we'll continue these through the general election. So it's good to have Sheldon on today. A couple more things. Sheldon was recently on Straight Talk with Kim and Carolyn, and this was just the other day, right, Sheldon? I think you were one of the 3 guests. So yeah, it
was last Monday.
Last Monday, okay. And so I talked to Kim Coleman and Carolyn who do the show, and I said, hey, can you get our 3 primary candidates in the county onto your show? And Kim said absolutely. And so she's got Sheldon, Kim Del Grosso, and of course Carolyn, who's also one of our 3 candidates, but it's also her show. So I encourage everyone to go and watch that. In fact, before I forget, I would like to I want to share in the comments the links to their show. Let's see, hopefully this comes across okay. So they have a it only let me share the YouTube link, I think, or maybe, let's see, maybe let me try that again. So we got the YouTube link. I think what it did is it combined them. So let me try this again. So there's the YouTube link for their show. This is the Facebook Live. Let's see if it shares it. Okay, there we go. Now it's working. And then this is the Rumble. So they're on all 3, whatever's easier for you. The show is out there. It's episode number 28. And all 3 of the candidates are on there. So then the other thing that I wanted to share with you is at convention, we had some pretty good results. We had 11, let's see, 1, 2, I forget how many, I think it was 11 or 12 races, I'm forgetting now. And of those races, all but 2 of them, we had actual convention winners. And to be a convention winner, you have to have 60% or more of the vote. So that means, okay, somebody has actually shared the Zoom. Interesting. Okay. Somehow the Zoom got out there. All right, let me see. I'm going to go ahead and admit people. That's kind of dangerous, huh? I'm going to go ahead and admit people. Okay, so those of you who have actually joined the Zoom, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and remain muted. In fact, I'm going to just go ahead and that's not how that was supposed to work. So let's do this. I'm going to, there's a way to apologize. This is one of the things about technology. I'm pretty good at this for work, but when it comes to, I'm going to mute everybody for just a second, and then I will unmute Sheldon. Okay, Sheldon, you can unmute yourself. So those of you who are joining us on the Zoom, if you can go ahead and turn off your cameras, I'd appreciate that. We actually didn't intend on sharing the actual Zoom. We intended on sharing the YouTube, but that's okay. This will work. So okay, so these are the candidates. So everybody who's in yellow is an actual convention winner. So they came out with 60% or more of the convention vote. That means the delegates who came and attended the convention, they voted for them and they got 60% of the vote. So I think that's pretty important because these delegates did a lot of work. They did a lot of background vetting, researching these candidates, deciding which one they felt represented the party better. And hey, this is the result. And so Sheldon is one of them. But Sheldon's race is a little bit unique because, so two things. It's unique because he beat out Steve DeBry, who was the incumbent, and Steve DeBry also gathered signatures. So even though Sheldon got 74% of the vote, which we'll talk about a little bit later, what happened is Steve DeBry gets to go to the primaries and run against Sheldon again. Now, the party, if you go look at our bylaws, Article 10, Section 5 is very clear that the party supports and provides resources to the winner of convention. And so even though Steve DeBry is technically still in the race, we support Sheldon. Now, if Sheldon loses at primaries, then we'll stand behind Steve DeBry. But the idea is that the delegates have chosen Sheldon as the better candidate, and pretty significantly, I might say. So we'll see how this turns out. But this is where you get to know Sheldon, and you get to decide, if you would support him in the primary as well. And there's two other races like that, and that's with Kim Del Grosso, who is the state school board 4. She also beat the incumbent, and but Cindy Davis, who was her competitor, also gathered signatures. And then the same thing happened with Carolyn Phippen, who won her race against Jeff Stenquist, who was the incumbent, but also gathered signatures. So they're all on here. So, and if you want to go look this up, I encourage you to go to our website. And then actually, I'm going to make this a little bit, you go to our website and then you click on the candidate results right on the front page. That'll take you to this, and you can see the results as well. But I also want to show you one more, let's see, I think one more thing before we get going. Two more things. This is a complete list of all of the candidates who either won the convention or came out of convention for a runoff. And so you can get a copy of this. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this for you and copy, let's see if I can make it. I'm going to put this in the comments as well. So you can go to it and you can go look at this for yourself. You can download it and have a copy of it. So it's really important to know, again, who the party is supporting or who came out of convention and the party is supporting because of that, so that you know who the delegates felt represent the party the best. Okay, one last piece of information here, and then we'll get into talking to Sheldon. So E-Club, it's really, really important. I know that a lot of people don't believe this, but I don't get paid. Nobody in the party, at least in the Salt Lake County Republican Party, gets paid to do this job. And it's a very tedious, difficult job to not only raise funds but this is, I would say it's a full-time job, but it's not. It's a full-time and a half job. Plus I have a full-time job, and so do all my officers. So I gotta say that please help us out. This is how we are able to promote our candidates and able to do the things that we do as a party. If you believe in the principles of the Republican Party, not the personalities, the principles, then please find a way to donate. And then I just want to say, if you donate at the silver or gold level, which is $10 or more a month, then you get invited to what we call the E-Club Luncheon. And so that's once a month. It's I think it's the first Wednesday of the month, if I remember right. We do an E-Club Luncheon with either an elected official, or during campaign season, we do it with some of the candidates. And we sit down with them, ask them questions, eat some good food. And last time we went to the Himalayan restaurant in the district, was really good. Had a good conversation with Gowd, who's running for county clerk. He was fantastic. And so please join us at this. Well, become a member and join us at the E-Club. You'll get an email if you do join. And nobody's paid in the party. So please help us out where you can. All right. So now this is where we wanted to get to. Sheldon, thank you so much for coming on. First of all, I just want to say I was really impressed, as apparently a lot of the delegates were, with some of the messaging and some of the information that you made us aware of during your campaign. In the town halls, some information came out that I think was pretty significant. We actually go to the same church, and so you stopped me one day and you said, "Did you know this and this?" I said, "I didn't, but I'm going to remain neutral until after convention." Right? I was very clear about that, right? And so I said, that's great. I'm glad you're running. And he kind of educated me a little bit, and I left it to the delegates, and this is what they did: 74% approval. So that's amazing in and of itself. And I think some of the issues that you brought out are very, very concerning for our district. And I think that people need to be aware of some of these issues. So let's get started. Do you want to do a quick intro to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. It's interesting seeing a label of 74% delegate approved. It almost sounds like I'm like a vegetable or a fruit or something, but we'll kind of leave it at that. But yeah, so I'm Sheldon Stewart, obviously. I am currently a councilman in the city of Riverton. And about 5 years ago, I had been going through kind of an audit with Unified Fire Authority, which I currently sit on, that board of directors, and went through a lot of things there, dealing with some change, some conflict of interest issues. If some of you guys are familiar with the organization, what you'll notice is that that at that time we had a county council member that was the chief for that organization. We went through an audit with State Auditor John Dougal, and I worked closely with him. And actually, if you pull that audit report, you'll see that my name's next to the majority of those items that we fixed and improved inside the organization, from transparency to spending policies to everything accountability in the budget. And so that was really a big thing for me. And during that time, I'd been approached about, hey, we have this same type of scenario inside the county council with one of our other county council members, who's my opponent now, and his employer, Unified Police Department, which is basically the county sheriff's arm of police services. And they will say, oh, that's a separate extension, but the sheriff is over Unified Police Department, and there is funding that comes from the county into that organization. So I was approached by that, and that's kind of my background. I grew up here in the Southwest. Matter of fact, at 2 weeks old, I moved to West Jordan. At 5 years old, I moved to Riverton, and I haven't left Riverton ever since, other than for a 2-year stint to Portugal, and then a short stint I spent up in Ogden trying to figure out if that was the right place to live for about 9 months. And I made the right decision. Davis County's not the place for me. So moved back down to the Southwest here, and been in my home here for 17 years. Most people think there I live in is Harriman. We refer to ourselves as Riverman, or I like to call it the Riverton Peninsula. But yeah, just I've created a lot of relationships. I have strong relationships with the Bluffdale, Harriman, and South Jordan kind of leadership, just because of the type of area that we live in and kind of the issues that we face. So that's my quick intro. I don't know if there's other things you want me to hit on, Chris, but I think there might be some questions. So
yeah, no, I appreciate that. So I am going to just let everybody know, all the audience know, that if you type a question in the comments, we will ask Sheldon to answer it. So I'd love to get some questions going. I have some questions for you. Well, first of all, I do want to say this. You are my city councilman. And back when Trent Staggs ran, I remember you promoting Trent, and I didn't really know Trent at the time, but you kind of convinced me that Trent was a good guy. He later ran for county mayor, which I really now wish he had won, because he's done a phenomenal job in the city. But to now have you running for councilman, you two are both amazing, and I just wanted to say that really quick. I think you've done a great job here in Riverton, and I want to thank you for that. But so I think you kind of answered this, but maybe if there's anything else, why is it you chose to run for county council now? What is it? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I referred to the Unified Fire Authority audit and kind of things we're going through then, saw the same issues happening with Unified Police Department and my opponent, Steve DeBry, which you guys all met, you mentioned earlier, and kind of that conflict of interest. At the time, 5 years ago, when I was approached about this, one of the things that I really saw is that I would love to have made that move then. But the problem I saw is I needed to stabilize Unified Fire Authority. We had just brought in a new chief. I was the chair at the time, and we really needed to get these policies in place that prevented some of the abuses that had happened before. So now we've stabilized. If you all didn't know, the chief that had came in and helped that organization stabilized, he has now retired and left the organization. And we are in a good spot, and I felt like it was the right move. I also personally established a term limit for me. I said I would never be longer than a 2-term senator in any seat that I ever worked in, because I think it's too long. If you've ever been in a seat longer than 12 years, you're in too long. So that's the reason why I decided that this was the point for me. Either I needed to move away and get out of politics, or I needed to move on and try and do something else. And I just really watched the lack of funds. I watched the budget double during the time that Steve has been on the county council. And I didn't see our voice being represented on the county council. And so those were really the things that triggered me. I feel like this subsidy that we've got going on of 3 points, it varies. The last time I checked was 3.3 million. And in a recent report, they report it's 3.6 million of a subsidy that we all as county residents pay to Unified Police Department, that basically subsidize anybody that has Unified Police Department. So a lot of you don't know that, but yes, as taxpayers, we're double taxed, especially those of us in the Southwest, because none of us utilize Unified Police Department. So that's really what triggered me to run. I've seen spending in the county just go through the roof. I mean, and like mentioned earlier, my opponent did gather signatures, and he paid $14,000 to get 1,700 signatures. And if he's willing to spend that on a campaign, I'm sorry, if I've been in office for 12 years, I'm pretty confident that I probably knew 1,700 people that would sign a sheet for me to get on a ballot. And if I didn't feel that, then why am I running? That's
an interesting point. And it's something that I always bring up as well. And so, but the fact is, a lot of people get mad because I say, oh, the party should be supporting all Republicans. That's not true. The party should be supporting the Republicans that the delegates have chosen, like I said earlier. And so, and it's interesting that, and I'm not trying to bash on Steve DeBry, but it's interesting that an incumbent, after being in office, as long as he has, you could beat him so handily, right? And I think There's a question here that I'd like to bring up, and I think it actually kind of addresses this. So this was from Heather. She said, recently Harriman residents have been disappointed with the county services in our area. How do you plan on representing Harriman? And the reason why I think that that's key to what you just said is I think that some of the people on the council, specifically the one representing District 5, have disappointed us a bit in the way that they've been voting. And tell me a little bit about that. How do you plan on representing Harriman differently? You're still muted, by the way. You're muted. There we go.
Sorry, it said the host had to unmute me. So
that was my fault then.
So, well, yeah. So number one, I've already met with most of the council members in the cities I represent, or at least the mayors, and made a commitment that I will be in the council meetings at least once a quarter. That's something that I've never had from Steve at all. That's key, and giving updates on the initiatives that are happening and what's going on in it, and then meeting more frequently as needed, right? There's projects, but I like to do this in my current business. I at least have a checkpoint with all of the people that I work with on a routine basis. I call them one-on-ones. These will kind of be my one-on-ones with each of the cities. But also I publish my agendas. If you go look at my Facebook page, my Sheldon Stewart, every single time that I've had a meeting, you can go back in the entire history. You'll see that my council meeting agendas are out there for communication. But I'll also give you an example where I've already represented Harriman. So Mayor Staggs was not available to attend what's called a COG meeting, the Council of Government Meetings. And it's a meeting where they make decisions on funding for certain funds for corridor preservation. And during the meeting, there was I think it was about $4.5 million for some corridor preservation on some SLR property inside the Harriman boundaries. And Ben McAdams, out of all the people, was in this meeting arguing for that portion of money to help what's called the S line, which is the streetcar line, to punch across the street into this high-end development that's going to benefit him and everybody else, just to move across 1300 East. But yeah, this corridor was going to service many more people and help Harriman City. And in the meeting, I was able to work with a couple other mayors, including Mayor Dolly, who serves on the UFA board, and convince them to vote that money should go to Harriman. And so I actually preserved that money for Harriman to help you guys make sure you have that corridor preserved. I've always been engaged with all the other neighboring cities. And so that's something, is being aware, being in contact, having those routine checkpoints, and that's key for me. And then publishing the information so people can go and check it out. That's really it. And then the other thing is being able to be questioned. So I love to be questioned, and government should be questioned. That I've always loved that. And some people think, what? An elected official saying he wants to be questioned. Government's role is to be questioned, and residents should be questioning government. And that's really what I want to have happen here. And I find too often that whenever we as residents and citizens ask questions, we're told we don't have that right. Well, yes, that's our job. We need to keep them in check. Otherwise, we get to the point where we see the county, where the budget is bloated, where it continues to grow, and it needs to be shrinking down. We need to start pushing out what the county is doing into local and get rid of some of the things that we're doing. The government at the county level just continues to expand. So that's the other thing, is we need to provide those avenues for residents to be able to ask those questions and check.
I love that you said that, because I completely agree. And it's interesting that in today's environment, when citizens want to question government, a lot of it, even people in our own party have said, nah, that just puts everything, that undermines, government. And it's like, well, wait a minute, that's not how it's supposed to work. We're not supposed to just remain, good little citizens, good little soldiers. So anyway, so I love that. There's a couple more questions here, and so let's get into them. And I don't know who this is. Says C. Schultz. He says, if you believe in two terms, this is a valid question, and I'm curious to see how you answer it. If you only believe in two terms, Does that mean you do not support Senator Mike Lee for his reelection? I personally have a very strong feeling on that, but what's your opinion on that?
I said, for me personally, I would never be in longer than a 2-term senator. So here's the thing: is the reason why I said that rule for myself is because that's 3 elected terms. Because usually your first term in local government, you're figuring out your ways, you're working through it. The second term, you're actually getting projects done, projects started, and third term, you're wrapping them up. I think that, federal government, I'm not going to argue for the whole Mike Lee thing, but I think it's kind of the same scenario. Your first term, you're figuring it out. Your second term, you're doing it. And your third term, you're getting things done. So I would argue he's got a third term and then he's done. In local politics, it's not as hard to weave your way through federal government like he does. Local politics, that's you're weaving your way through in your first 4 years. And so for me, I just said it was a 2-term senator is my take, which is 12 years. And so maybe I should have just said 12, for me as local government, it's 12 years because it's 3 terms. So maybe I should have just used the term 3 terms. So the way I worded it, maybe I should have just said 3 terms. But I use a 2-term senator for myself because that's the way that I view it. So.
Yeah, no, that's valid. And I questioned that too. I had the same thought about Senator Mike Lee. We don't want to talk about him right now, but I will just say this. When you're happy, when you've got something that works, you've got somebody in there who's doing the right thing, man, why would you want to change? So I personally feel like those types of term limits on yourself is fine. Term limits, term limits are whether you get reelected. If we are dumb enough to not vote somebody out who's doing a bad job, we deserve it. So that's just my opinion, but it's a great question though. The next question we had is, do you support expanding mental health in our Southwest area? And do you support open space? I guess that's a few questions. And what can you do to support the Southwest Transportation Plan? So there's 3 questions here: mental health in the Southwest area, open space, and transportation plan.
Yeah, so let me kind of hit each one because they're unique. Obviously, mental health, 100%. I think we need to do more with the mental health. That is a big deal for me. It's actually a really great question that, I've always looked at and I've always felt like is a concerning thing. I'll give you an example of what I have worked on. So I did participate as a volunteer board member in the South Valley Services. Now, this isn't 100% mental health, but it is a service for people that are victims of domestic abuse and violence. But they do provide services that deal with those type of mental health things that come along with that. And through that, Riverton actually has a location in our city hall because of my participation in that, where we gave them for free space that people can go. And they've actually learned there's a way that they go in and they can ask the billing department and they can get them over to someone that can help them. But that's one of the questions. Some of you may have been on the Harriman Happenings post that I did the other day, where I actually had said, show me where the mental health facilities are that are supposed to be invested based on the dollars and the numbers that were being given. There isn't a single one in the Southwest. We need to get that out here. The other thing too, though, is I think it does tie into a little bit of the transportation question that I think was part of that. We don't have transportation to get it there. And so in some of my other ecclesiastical roles, I've had to help some people. And the closest facility we could get people to that needed those services that are county-based is up at 201. The 201 building is what I like to call it, off 21st South. That is the closest facility that I could find. I think there is a little bit maybe over in Sandy, but that was really the facility that we drive people to. And so as we continue to expand out here, we need to do that. And we need to make an awareness. And there's actually a good book that was given to me that is, I'm Not Sick, I Don't Need Help. And actually, it was a great read. It was a delegate that handed it to me. And there's a lot of information in it. I won't go through it all, but it does walk you through quite a few things and how you should approach that. It's a different way of thinking about it. So the other one was transportation. And Chris, sorry, what was the middle one? I apologize.
That was mental health, open space.
Open space. So, I think everybody agrees we want open space, right? There's a level of it, but it also has to be properly designated. So in Riverton, I'll use Riverton example because that's my experiences for the last 12 years. We have open space that we have, worked to dedicate with, certain zoning that we worked with the landowner. The landowner, their decision was that they wanted to keep this space A5, which is our agricultural 5-acre open space zoning. But we've also done a lot to preserve spaces where people can congregate, do the things that they need recreational. So I do think that it's there, but I also believe in the individual rights of the landowners. And so if you look at any policy that's ever passed in Riverton, it's been in conjunction with the landowner. And the landowner working with us and their decisions. So our historical preservation committee and our historical ordinance, it's not a forced historical ordinance. It's the landowner working with the historical preservation committee to make that decision. And a good example, if you ever go down Redwood Road and it's approximately 12900 South, I think they refer to it as the old Bevan Mansion. It's really not a mansion, but at the time they thought it was a mansion. And it is now a commercial business that they decided to designate that as a historical site, and they rebuilt that building. It kept the historical nature and it's being used as a commercial building.
So to summarize, you believe in property rights.
Yes.
You're saying, which is
it's
exactly
the
what
property rights.
That's
working
exactly
with the
what,
landowner, and if they want it to be a historical preservation thing, then they work with it. Same thing with the open space. That landowner that did the A5, we worked with the landowner. It was their decision that they wanted to preserve that as an A5.
Yeah. No, and that goes right along with our platform. I mean, I think that's really important that people remember that that's an important part of our platform, is we believe in property rights. So yeah. I'm glad you said that.
So as it relates to transportation, so anybody want to watch fun meetings with me? Carlton, who is the kind of one of the three at UTA, he and I have had some fun interactions in city council meetings. So Riverton, 10 years ago, over 10 years ago now at this point, we actually went and paid for a study to look at what transit looked like in Riverton. And actually we have gone through the extent to preserve corridor for, transit and interconnectivity. And alls we have seen from UTA is more money taken out of our pockets with appeasing services. And what I will say is, I have learned a lot through this process of being a candidate. So I had a hard time with VIA, and I made some statements that were very bold about VIA. VIA is a great solution. So anybody that hears me say this, it is, I learned a lot from an individual, well, from Christine is her name, and I won't give her last name, but she taught me a lot. I went and researched it even further without my bias, and VIA does work for a lot of people. My frustration is seeing a lot of the dollars that we had been paying, especially with the quarter on a quarter that all of Salt Lake County voted no on, and that Steve voted to put back in place under the state legislation that it was passed for the county, for UTA to receive more money, and yet we're seeing less dollars invested into the Southwest. So what my argument should be now is, if we're going to do VIA, we should see 3 times the amount of VIA vehicles in this area. So transportation in that area, and the argument that we keep getting is ridership is low. Ridership is low. Well, the problem with ridership is we have to have service to use. And so my famous statement that I love to tell everybody, because I did it in a meeting and I said it to Carlton, is I said, Carlton, that's like me telling a farmer, you have to go down to the Walmart parking lot and bale hay. It's just not going to happen unless I give you a field that you can grow hay in. So if you don't give me service, we won't ride, and we're not going to be able to ride and do it. And so until we get a lot more VIA, then we'll do it. And so I want more VIA for the money we're paying.
I have a personal problem with VIA, just like you described. I have a son who is autistic, as you know, and he tried to use VIA for a while. It was a disaster. He could never get to work on time because I hate to say it, but it was kind of unreliable. And they just didn't, when I say unreliable, they just couldn't be there when he needed them to be there, or they just weren't available at that time. And it was very frustrating for him. So yeah, I agree. I completely agree with everything you just said. So, I appreciate that very much personally. So there's another question here. And I want to make sure that we address it. How are we doing on time? We're still pretty good, right? So
Yeah.
it's 7:30. Okay. So the next question that I've got here is, what would you cut in the county budget? And then they go on to say, I personally am frustrated with the amount of money that I pay in county taxes versus city.
Yeah. So right now, executive branch is way bloated. We've got a county mayor that has got, it varies between 6 and 7 deputy mayors. And she'll say, no, I have 3 deputy mayors, but she has 4 assistant deputy mayors. We also have duplication of services. So in cities, and those that are out there that have worked within cities, most cities only have a single finance department. But if you look at the county, we have a finance department in the sheriff's office, or sheriff's office / UPD. We have a finance department in the executive branch with the mayor's office. We have a finance department for the general county. Why don't we just have one finance department?
Right.
Why do we have all these? We have a communications department for the mayor's office. We have a communications department for the county. We just see all these duplicative services. That's where I would start cutting, is saying, hey, what's duplicative? Why do we have all these heads? We have at-large county council members that are working with one policy advisor. Why can an at-large county council member work with one policy advisor, yet our mayor has to have 7 deputy mayors plus an entire department and a communications department? Why can't our county mayor work with one individual and then work with a finance department and with all these other departments? That is just mind-boggling for me. We have all this waste, and then what we do is then we have my opponent votes for a $20 million fair housing project that includes a full-time employee that's going to be a hired county employee just a month ago from one-time revenues.
Yeah.
Which is the America Rescue Plan dollars, which are monies that, hey, yeah, they came in. I understand the reasons, but here's the thing. What are the strings that are tied to those dollars? And we've got
You're actually answering another question that just came up too. So keep going, but it's interesting.
So that's the thing, is we need to analyze those dollars that are coming in. What are those requirements? And even then I look at that fair housing and I'm like, does that fair housing really fit in the rubric that they defined of those use of funds? So that is really where I'm saying, hey, as we look at this and we start talking about it, those are areas that I'm like, we're struggling with that, where right now Riverton City is trying to do a one-time deal with our Greenwell, which will save the county money, which will benefit the Riverton residents and bring us actually a better water source and help us remove our reliance upon Jordan Valley Water Conservancy. Yet, for some reason, this project originally was going to be voted on in March, and then I announced that I was running against my opponent, and it seems to get kicked after these key dates that are tied to the election. So the next date is June 7th, and now I'm hearing it might be kicked till around June 23rd or 24th, which that means after all the ballots are out. And part of that is because I think that some people are worried about my relationship with Mayor Staggs and how close we are, and kind of the type of work that we do together. So, that's really what I would say, is that we have a lot of this spending that we're willing to do with one-time money that actually has a reoccurring expense with it. And those are the areas that I would hit. So maybe I did hit a few extra questions that are out there, but I really have a hard time with the way our money's there. It's hard to say no to the money, but I got to tell you, you got to really look at those strings that are attached to it. So
right. No, I think you're absolutely right on that. And I'll just reiterate, I've spoken with other council members who are very concerned about some of the same things that you mentioned, especially where there's duplicative departments. They didn't mention the ones you did. So that's interesting. You've been thinking about others. In fact, actually on that topic, I want to add to that question. Of those, what you mentioned, finance, you mentioned finance for multiple finance departments. How confident are you that those can be combined? I mean, I think I know the answer, but why do you think that those are duplicative, and why do you think that they can, one finance department could cover multiple departments?
So my full-time job is in banking and working in finance, and money is money. And what you do is you have separate funds, and accounting for different balances and accounting for different departments. It's literally just a journal entry. It's a transaction. It's an intercompany thing. And organizations that deal with finances, we do this all the time. We prepare intercompany. We have one CFO that deals with multiple. You might add one clerk here or there, but you don't need an entire finance department in different organizations that have different priorities and objectives. And that's where we run into problem. And then what happens is we create more work, that we hire other employees to deal with that additional work that's created because we have these competing objectives. So that's where I see, because it's literally intercompany activity, or if you want to call it fund management, because that's governmental accounting, right? So we have general fund, we have these other funds. It's all as it is fund management. And there is still a central budget. There's one budget. The county has one budget. You just have different funds. So
no, I'm sorry. The fact that that's kind of your industry, and that that explains why you focused on that one. I'd encourage you, when you win, let's put it that way, that you work with some of the other council members, because they've had some ideas similar to what you've said as well. So I love that you're kind of on the same page there. I wanted to get to one of the other questions. Well, I'm going to tie off one of the questions because you kind of answered it, but I just want to make sure that you've answered it fully. Will you vote for more federal funds to come into our county? Why or why not? Like I said, I think you answered it, but I just want to make sure that.
Well, I would say this: it's hard to refuse when you have these free dollars if everybody else is getting it, right? That's really hard to say no. But when you have certain strings that create expenses or create obligations, if those obligations go against my morals, I will never allow it.
Right.
That is one thing I will say, is that if it's going to cause me to have to go against my morals, I will not allow that. And I'm a strong believer in the Constitution. So if I have to accept funds that take away the Second Amendment rights, there's no way I will ever approve those funds coming in.
You brought it up. I'm sorry. You brought up Second Amendment. This kills me about the county. There are buildings within the county that where they are trying to impose a no gun rule, even though it's a county building and they're not supposed to be able to do that. So I'm trying to think of one of the bill. I believe. Well, I don't want to misspeak because I don't want to say which one, but I do know that there's a few of them, and I don't want to blame somebody who doesn't deserve it. But I'll say this: the Sandy Mountain America Center, they tried to impose no guns, which they even have gun events there, but they did it one time, and I think that's been a while. But how do you feel about that? How would you handle that? Second Amendment's a big issue in the party.
So,
right?
I went to the University of Utah when they tried to impose no guns on the University of Utah campus. It's a governmental, it's public's property. The one area I do support no guns is inside of judicial courts. Sure. Because obviously we've seen what's happened when guns have gotten through those areas. Personally, I think that's the one area that you're authorized, and I won't disagree with that. Everywhere else, you know what, if it's a law-abiding citizen that is doing what they're supposed to and following the law, which the law right now allows you to conceal, then, if you're concealing, you're doing it right for the right reasons. Why shouldn't you be allowed to carry? That's a right to do it. Same thing though with the freedom of speech. I believe in the freedom of speech. I don't believe in government overreach. The government shouldn't tell you how to control your life. That's a choice. And I'm going to defend your choice to not, impose on that. Now, I'm a strong believer in the choice of all life from inception. So that's a big deal for me. And I'm going to do everything to preserve that from inception. So.
Yeah, well, and I always say that is my number one priority in the party is to support the life. And so I really appreciate you saying that. All right, there was okay, where was it? There was another question I just want to make sure we get to. Let's see, here it is. How can we support affordable housing without eliminating city zoning? Do you believe the government has a role in making housing affordable?
Yeah, so here's the thing: is affordable housing is a buzzword, is what I'm going to call it. And this is probably not going to be popular with some of the people out there, but it is a buzzword for developers. And so we've got to be cautious of that. Now, zoning is important because what it does is it helps you kind of understand what is going to be next to you and around you. So when you buy your house and your property rights, right? And so zoning, I view zoning as this is how you understand what you preserve for what's around you. And so everybody used to joke, and it's kind of the joke, is that Councilmember Stewart is SD Stewart in Riverton. And I'll explain SD for just a quick minute. It's special designation. And it's the way that I've helped to overcome with zoning some of those, hey, here's a landowner that now wants to take and utilize his property and allow to get the best gain out of it. And so SD allows you to kind of mitigate the impacts of the neighboring property owners while allowing them to get the best gain for their property. And so I'll give you a big example of that. So everybody knows where Costco came in here in Riverton in our Mountain View Village area. Yeah. If you'll notice, there's a road just to the north side and there's this big empty field. That was part of my requirements for that zoning for business. It's a 200-foot buffer that said, hey, right here, this is going to be houses that match those houses, because this got zoned after those people built those houses. Mm-hmm. And it was something that property owner there agreed that would be a good thing that would allow them to do what they did. And then I just made a suggestion. It wasn't a zoning that, hey, build what you're going to build out there before you build those houses. So that's what you see there. And it was an agreement that came to that. And I think it helped appease most of those homeowners there. And that's what I used. And this wasn't a true SD, but it was an MDA, but it was an element of how an SD works. Mm-hmm. But that's where you do that. And so that affordable housing, government shouldn't be involved in affordable housing at all.
Right.
A lot of people think it should be, because that's it. There is private entities that do it all the time. And I'll give you an example. Again, I'm in banking. And there's a thing that we have to do that's called CRA, which actually is government, but it's government that's put these mandates that actually creates private business doing what affordable housing is. We actually go in and we're required, because of predatory lending that we did back in the 70s. And I say we because we're banking, but it's really not me, that we have to actually make loans to certain areas. We have to do certain things, which actually does the affordable housing. It gives people lower interest loans that allows them to get into homes that may not have been able to get into a home. It allows, and we actually go in and we do improvements in areas to help people that are in that. So you actually have private business doing that already. So government doesn't need to involve in that. And I might have some people hit me on that, but that's really what CRA is. It's a community reinvestment, and it does a lot of other things too. But one of the primary areas is lending for affordable housing. So government doesn't need to go in and do what we just did with that $20 million vote that just happened about a month ago.
Yeah. Well, this is my opinion, but I also think that the housing crisis is another buzzword that, especially in Utah, doesn't even make sense. I mean, they base that term on how many people live in your home or how many generations live in your home. Well, we're Utahns. We love our grandparents, we love our kids, and we often live together, and that's by choice. But when they do the statistics, they say, oh, look, there's a housing crisis because all these generations have to live together. There's no crisis. That's a plan. That's what we do in Utah. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just something, so yeah, I completely agree with you on the affordable housing and the crisis. I love, that you're on top of that. You understand that, because I think it's something that for too long we've looked at and just assumed that the government could fix it. Government can't fix it. It's not, there's some things that could help, but it really should be up to us. All right. So let's see. I have a question for you.
Okay.
This is related to Olympia Hills. Olympia Hills has been a really hot topic in our area, right? And so I look at the planning that's going on. I'm concerned. I look at just today. I was trying to get to the Mountain View Mountain Ridge High School and back, and it wasn't even during like a rush hour. I mean, it was crazy. It was just like a couple hours before rush hour, and it took forever to get there and back. And I'm only mile and a half away, 2 miles away, and I'm concerned. What's going to happen when Olympia Hills comes in? Why is it? What is it about it that's frustrating people and the cities?
So here's my favorite question, because it's the one I get. It's the one that Steve, my opponent, he's kind of tried to use as, hey, I was the only no vote, and I'm going to try and explain some reasons why we should have never even been to the point that we were voting. And this is why it frustrated me as a council member, and why this no vote really has some issues for me. So number one, let me tell you the reason why the county should never be involved in it. So the county, what happened is the county had this policy, and it's really a policy that they should have followed, and they didn't. That basically they're not involved in land use decisions. So the area in Riverman or Riverton that we live, or the Riverton Peninsula that I live in, when this was actually brought forward to be rezoned, when they came forward, the county said, hey, this is below 1 acre in density. You need to go to the next incorporated area, which Harriman wasn't incorporated at the time. This was coming forward in, I think it was 1997 was the year that this rezone came forward. So Monarch Meadows portion of it, but the Foothills portion of it was actually before that, but the entire area came in as a redevelopment. Or kind of a rezone. And so they said, hey, you need to go Riverton City. And so that's how Riverton got this funky boundary out here, was that they actually had to go and incorporate to Riverton, because Riverton had the ability to assess impact fees. And this is the key thing that everybody needs to understand, and why this is so frustrating, and why Steve should have been screaming on the rooftops that this is why the county should not even be doing this vote. But instead, he just did a silent no vote. It really wasn't the screaming on the rooftops as much as it should have been. This was us going, and we shouldn't have ever been considering this. And we need to really go to the state legislator and get them to pass an ordinance that says county is not involved in land use. They should not be involved in land use, period. We shouldn't be involved in it. It should go to cities, because they have the ability to levy and take impact fees. Those impact fees pay for the roads, the sewer lines, and the water. And that's why the Olympia Hills deal is such a big deal. The other problem I have with it is that during that vote, the vote happened during what's called ICSC. This is where most of the cities, and Harriman was with us, Riverton was there, South Jordan was there. We were all down at ICSC in Las Vegas. This is where we go and we help to recruit businesses that help bring us recurring revenue. They published the agenda while we were down there, and they voted while we were down there in Las Vegas. We were all down there, and we were all trying to call Steve, and we were trying to call all of them. Yeah, we were all trying to call him and tell him not to do it. And they wanted to do the vote, and Ben McAdams wanted to do the vote, because Ben McAdams knew that he got to veto that year so that he would win, and he beat Mia Love that year. So wow. I won't keep going on it, but here's the other problem I've got with it. Harriman is doing a really good job with a bag of crap. This is what I'm gonna speak for these Harriman City Council and Mayor. They got handed a bag of crap. If any of you guys have ever played poker, which I don't play poker other than for fun, and when I did it with scouts, and for those parents that were one of my scouts, which I know Chris's kids were one of my scouts, I'm just gonna say that we didn't ever bet on anything, but we would say this, that if we played poker, it's like me taking 4 of your 5 cards. Harriman had 4 of their 5 cards already shown to the developer, and they're negotiating with that. This is the positive side of it, is that they're doing their best with the bag of crap, and at least they're getting impact fees that can pay for the impacts. Because otherwise, if it stayed with the county, we were all going to have to build roads and infrastructure to support this on our own backs, while the county sat there and allowed this developer to do it. And so that's my issue with Olympia Hills. That's why we should have had a county council, that the county council still to this point should be screaming, Olympia should have never happened. We shouldn't be in land use. And I think we have some county council members that are willing to say that, but we've got others that say, no, we need to be involved in land use. So there's
two questions there. You said a lot there, and it's really helpful to understand that. I didn't know a lot of what you just said. So, you can't tell me what he was thinking probably, but why would Steve DeBry have been silent on that vote? Or, he still voted no, but why not scream? What's keeping him from making a big deal about this?
Yeah, so I see Anonymous here. I wonder whoever Anonymous is, but so it was his no vote, whatever it was. His no vote, he didn't go out saying, hey, we should never be voting on this. He should have, he didn't ever scream from the rooftops. But here's the thing is I tried to get a hold of Steve to get it, and I got blocked by Richard Jowsey. So whoever Anonymous is, just so you're aware, Richard blocked me from ever talking to Steve DeBry to tell him we're down at ICSC. None of that ever came up. So that's my take to whoever Anonymous is. So I just want you to know, Anonymous, that's it. So if you're not willing to say who you are, but you're willing to say this back, we watched it. By the way, I stood on a stage with Steve DeBry's fellow county council members while we sat there, and then we went to try to do the referendum that we got disqualified on the referendum. We sat on the stage. I sat on the stage, myself, Claude Wells, Mayor Staggs, Lauren Palmer, who wasn't mayor at the time, Teddy Hodges, as well as Amy Winder Newton was even there with us, as well as Laurie Stringham, who was running a campaign. Dave Alvord was on the stage with us. Dee Theodore was on the stage with us saying, hey, let's get this referendum going. And then we thought we had a lot of momentum. And then we got disqualified because they gathered signatures during COVID. And they weren't allowed to gather signatures during COVID. Whenever were we never allowed to gather signatures during COVID? That is frustrating. So that's the thing that I would say. So, but Steve, were you there? This was your area. This was a good chunk of your area, but yet you weren't on that stage. That's my frustration. Yet it was Riverton City Council members and us that were sitting on that stage alone. Well, not alone. We had other county council members.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that, and I appreciate you standing up at that point, because that was, yeah. Anyway, we don't need to get into all that. There was one other question. Heather asked, how can we support you as a candidate? She feels that, let me read what she said, the whole thing she said here, because I think it's really good. I agree on all the zoning comments you've made. The government does not belong in affordable housing. I appreciate that you've had experience as a councilman. How can we support you as a candidate in our community?
Yeah, biggest thing is get the word out. I'm running against an incumbent. He has a bigger purse than me. Not saying that money wins races, but it does help win races. That's really the thing that I think it is getting that word out. I'm doing my best. I'm getting out there. We're getting the doors knocked. We're canvassing is what we call it, with door knocking. I'm trying to get my mailers out, but I don't have that size of budget. If you guys drive around, I've got a meager budget. So my signs, I'm locating them in the best spots that I can. I'm not overwhelming them. I don't have an entire police force that's able to go out and put signs out for me. But I'm doing what I can. And so word of mouth is what I'm relying on here. But the one thing I do know is I have a strong belief in a God. And I will say this, I don't want it to be taken wrong at all. I believe Steve has fought really hard and tried to do what he can with what he had. But I think his priorities weren't here in the Southwest. I feel like his priorities were over in Mill Creek and wherever UPD was. And it's a noble fight. Even though we left UPD, this isn't a bitter thing about UPD, but I do feel like our officers are being neglected in the Southwest. I'm not about defunding police. I'm about paying for police in the right area. You know, that if we're going to put 3.4, 3.3 or 3.6 million, whichever report you look at, that's the other problem. The transparency is not quite there in the budget, but whatever that number is, let's get it to the right, let's give it to the communities, let them decide if they're going to use UPD for shared services, or if they're going to keep it in their interlocal, like we have with South Jordan, Harriman, and Riverton in the South Valley SWAT, or the South Valley kind of joint agreement we have for like our MCAT team. Let us decide what to do with those funds. And that's really what I'm arguing, that, let us decide with the TAP funds, or the ZAP funds, the Zoo Arts and Parks. If we're going to continue to vote that tax in, which I hope we don't keep voting it in, but because I think it can be privatized and done a lot better. But if we're going to continue to have that ZAP tax, then give the communities those shares and then let them decide. Let us work with Harriman and South Jordan. And if we want to do something in our area with the ZAP funds, then let us do it. When it comes to the TRCC, let's not keep dumping it in the convention centers and that stuff up there. Let's give it to the individual communities. And that's really the thing that I'm talking about. Like, I'm really worried about what's going to happen with this ARP money, because we're all paying for it to the federal government. Ultimately, we're going to pay it to the federal government.
Coming out of our pockets, yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of pet projects, and the distribution was based on number of citizens. So that money should really go based on citizen headcount. And in this district, we're about 300,000, roughly. And maybe my numbers are slightly off because Harriman is growing so massively fast. Bluffdale's got some growth. Riverton, we're not as massively growing, but we're still growing. But all the growth is really in the Southwest. It's almost all of it's in the Southwest. We got a little bit over in Magna and a little bit out in West in Kearns, but it's all West Jordan, South Jordan, Riverton, Harriman, South Jordan. And so that growth area is where it is. And so we really need to look at the way that we calculate and do this work. So
yeah, we need to wrap up.
Okay.
We're just barely over. But Sheldon, I just want to thank you so much for running. Thank you so much for all the effort you've put into this. You truly, you went into this and you said, look, if I can't come out of the convention, then I don't deserve to be in this position. You said that to me, and yeah. I really appreciate that. I think that's a noble thing to do, because that's what the party, that's how we work. This whole signature gathering thing that was imposed on the party, that's not how our bylaws work. That's not how we work. So I really appreciate that. And you mentioned the signs. I just want to make it clear, we helped you recently. We wrote you a $2,000 check from the party. I'd do it again if to ensure that that our our convention winners get through, because that is our role. And but to do that, we need contributions to the party. But I don't want to take anything away from you either, because even after you win this primary, you've got a whole general. Well, actually, do you have a general? Let me ask you that. You don't.
So yeah,
right.
Basically, there is no opponent from another party. So my race will be won in this primary, and that's where I need people to get out and vote.
This is the election
for me. This is my election.
Okay.
Unless there's a write-in that wins, and if anybody looks at the history of write-in voters in Utah. But if I could do a really quick sign-off, Chris, just if people want to know more about me or want to get in touch with me, my website's really easy. It's just www.sheldon, SHELDON, the number 4, the letter U.com. And you can make donations there for me as well, but you can also contact me. You'll always be able to get my cell via text. It's on that website. I will never hide from you. When I'm a county council member, that cell phone number is not going to change. So you'll be able to get a hold of me. If you can't get a hold of me, I'll respond to you within 24 hours unless I'm on vacation, but I do use my out of office. But look at that. I'll answer questions. And also, Heather just had a quick question. This race covers all of Riverton, Bluffdale, most of South Jordan, almost everything in South Jordan that's east of Bangerter. It's everything in Draper that is west of I-15. And then it's almost in West Jordan, it's got this really weird, funky jog, but just think of Copper Hill's boundary. It's Bacchus Highway, basically to Redwood Road, 7800 South, and then it does a little weird jog out there. So but that's kind of the boundaries. And then Harriman, it takes in Harriman. It's about 5,600 west, 13800 south out to 60th west. So take a diagonal. It's almost like a diagonal line kind of, but it has weird boundary that starts in the corner over by, the Maverick on 126th and 4570 west over to Corner Canyon in the Cove. So, and you can see those boundaries on my website or link out to the county's website.
I was just going to try to look it up and share it really quick, but we do need to wrap up. But if I can get this up there really quick before we sign off, I will. Thank you so much again, Sheldon, and I appreciate what you're doing. Again, it's always amazing to get over 60% of the delegate vote. It's really amazing to get 74%. So thank you for that. And I can't wait to have you on again on what did we say? June 23rd? Is that what we said? 23rd,
June
yeah.
23rd.
And so I can't wait to have you on again. Hopefully more people will be able to attend and send us questions again, like today. And we'll keep on. Again, we're going to do these every Thursday. Next one will be with the House districts that have a primary, and then also the school boards that have primary. And then, so it's all on our website, slcogop.com, and feel free to join us there. And then if you want to donate to Sheldon, I put the link in the comments there. And actually, because somebody did just share this with me, I'm going to go ahead and put up the map before we sign off, and so you can take a look. Let's see if I can. Here we go. So this is the map of the County Council 5. It's probably a little hard to read, but as you can see, this is the 15, right?
Yep, I-15's on the right there.
There we go. Yeah, okay. So the I-15, it's kind of got a weird little hook up here. But we got some West Jordan district up in here, South Jordan here. It looks like it goes around. Is that Daybreak right there? Am I reading that right?
Yeah, Daybreak is carved right out. So all of
okay,
Daybreak.
Well, lucky you, because no, I'm just kidding. And then you've got all of Harriman, Riverton, Bluffdale.
Not all of Harriman. It's got this weird boundary in Harriman.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you've got some of Harriman, but all of Riverton, though, it looks like, right?
Yeah.
So,
all of Riverton, all of Bluffdale.
Okay. So that's pretty good. It goes all the way down into Utah County. So, or right up to Utah County. So, yeah. So thank you again. We got to wrap up, and appreciate everything you're doing.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate everybody that participated. All right.
1 second here.